The Amazon is not a forest. It is a giant, breathing lung that wants to swallow you whole. For Elias Thorne, the canopy had become his only sky, a ceiling of interlocking emerald leaves that blocked the sun and trapped the rot of 1,000 years. He moved through the undergrowth with the mechanical precision of a man who had forgotten the sound of a city. His tan, tactical shirt, once crisp, was now a second skin of salt, sweat, and the red clay of the Madre de Dios. Every step was a battle against the green cathedral, where the air was so thick with moisture you didn't breathe it. You drank it. Elias wasn't here for adventure. Adventure is what people call it when they don't think they are going to die. He was here for a ghost, specifically the ghost of his father, a man who had vanished 20 years ago chasing a myth that the locals called the Eye of the Sun. The drone he had been piloting hummed like a giant, angry hornet above the trees. It was his only eye in the sky, searching for a temple that didn't exist on any satellite map. But as the rhythmic tribal drums began to thrum from somewhere deep in the valley, a sound that shouldn't have been there, the electronics began to scream. Static filled his monitor. The drone tilted, its motors whining in agony as it was yanked downward by an invisible force. Then, the silence. A sickening crunch of carbon fiber and magnesium echoed through the valley. The drone was dead, and Elias was truly alone. He stared at the blank screen, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. "The easy part is over," he whispered to the shadows. Hours later, Elias stood before the wreckage. The drone was a mangled mess of wires hanging from a strangler fig like a dead insect. He reached for his map, the physical one, hand-drawn by his father, but as he pulled it from his pack, he slipped. The muddy bank gave way, sending him tumbling into a stagnant pool. When he emerged, gasping, the map was a sodden, blurred ruin. The ink had bled into the paper, erasing 20 years of research in a single second. Panic, cold and sharp, flared in his chest. He was lost in the most dangerous place on earth, without a compass or a path. But as he wiped the silt from his eyes, he saw it, a faint, unnatural green pulse emanating from a break in the mangrove roots across the river. It wasn't the light of a firefly or the bioluminescence of a fungus. It was steady, rhythmic, and cold. Instinct, the voice of his ancestors, told him to turn back, to find the highest ground and wait for a rescue that would never come. But curiosity, that beautiful, lethal curse of the Thorne family, whispered a different name. The Eye. He unsheathed his machete, the steel glinting in the dying golden light of the sun. He waded into the river, the water waist-high and smelling of ancient iron. With every step, the humming grew louder, vibrating in his very teeth. He pushed aside a curtain of moss and froze. There, wedged in the mud, was a face made of solid, hammered gold. The mask was beautiful and terrifying. Its eyes were two uncut emeralds, the size of a man's fist, glowing with an internal fire that defied the laws of physics. Elias reached out, his fingers trembling. As he touched the cold metal, a ripple moved across the water, but it wasn't caused by him. The humming stopped. The jungle, which had been a cacophony of cicadas and macaws, went deathly silent. This was the fear his father had written about in his journals, the silence of the guardian. Elias turned slowly, his hand moving to the hilt of his blade. Above him, perched on a branch that seemed to bow under its weight, was a black jaguar. Its eyes weren't yellow, they were the same pulsing emerald green as the mask. The beast didn't growl. It watched him with a sentient, terrifying intelligence. Elias knew he had committed the ultimate sin. He had touched the treasure of a forgotten god. The jaguar leaped, a blur of shadow and muscle. Elias dove into the water, the mask clutched to his chest. He felt the wind of the predator's claws pass inches from his neck. He swam deep, the murky water blinding him, his lungs burning for air. He found an underwater crevice, a dark hole in the limestone, and kicked with everything he had. He emerged in a hidden grotto, coughing up river water, the golden mask still glowing in his hands. He wasn't dead, but he was no longer in the world he knew. The grotto led into a massive subterranean hall. Elias lit a flare, the red light bouncing off thousands of life-size terracotta statues. They weren't soldiers, they were families. Priests and children, all frozen in expressions of absolute terror, facing a single stone door. At the foot of the door lay a pile of modern equipment, a rotted backpack, an old Nikon camera, and a radio. Elias recognized the initials carved into the leather. LT, Elias Thorne. He picked up the radio, his hands shaking. It shouldn't have worked, but as he turned the dial, a voice crackled through the static, distorted, old, but unmistakably his father's. "Don't put it on, Elias."
The mask isn't a prize, it's a key. And once you turn the lock, you can never go back. The stone door began to rumble. The tribal drums he had heard from the drone speakers were now real, vibrating through the floor. The terracotta statues began to crack, green light leaking from their seams. Elias realized the statues weren't made of clay. They were people who had been preserved by whatever power sat behind that door. He looked at the mask, then at the radio, then at the closing exit. He wasn't just a survivor anymore. He was the final piece of a puzzle started decades ago. He walked toward the massive stone door, holding the mask aloft like a shield. The runes on the wall aligned with the glow of the emeralds, and the mountain itself seemed to moan as the entrance to the lost city finally ground open. Blinding, golden light poured out of the chamber, smelling of ozone and ancient incense. Elias stepped through the threshold and stopped. He wasn't looking at a city of stone. He was looking at a city of light. Pyramids of pure gold rose into a cavern so vast it had its own weather system. And there, standing at the base of the central spire, was a figure in a tan tactical shirt, aged by time but standing tall. The figure turned, and Elias saw his own face reflected in the eyes of his father. "You found it," the man said, his voice echoing through the hall of gold. "But the jungle doesn't let you leave with the treasure. It only lets you stay to guard it." Elias looked down at his own hands. They were starting to shimmer with a faint golden hue. The journey was over. The legend had begun.